Welcome everybody. Hope everybody's well. It is Monday, the 6th of July. Right, we're obviously going to go through obviously what is happening, why, where, how. We have had a trigger here, only just, and it was very brief, but obviously we are triggered in gold. But that's about it. That's about it for the day this morning. So we'll obviously go through the macro outlook. I want to keep on banging about the software tool because I do think it's going to really help everyone. So let me just obviously, you utilize the tool to begin with. So you guys obviously should have generated a report. What the most important things about the report is, this is top bit opportunity wise, but the most important things are these bits here, all right? And I've worked really hard to make this as beginner friendly as possible. So we've obviously got what is happening. You want to read this, and then what to watch for today. And obviously, then we've got a bit on obviously each currency pair, what the obviously market mood meter is, and then some levels and another brief trading card to watch out for. So these are obviously all things that I've implemented to help you. Just put a yes or no in the chat. Who's enjoying you using the macro tool? If you're enjoying it, put yes. If you've not really used it, put NA. Just put it in the chat for me. Yep, Ikins likes it. Brilliant. James likes it. Matt likes it. Okay, brilliant. Adrian likes it. Steve likes it. Oh, Steve hasn't used it yet. Perfect. Perfect. Uh, brilliant. Well, for those of you who obviously haven't used it, make sure you do because yeah, it's for obviously lots of the questions every single day that I get asked, I've made sure that it's a beginner friendly, way of using it. So yeah. Ikins, please can the characters be a little bit bigger? Okay, I have made them slightly bigger. I'm not going to go too big, but I will obviously make them a bit bigger. I'll make sure I do that today. Right, so we've obviously got construction PMI for the pound. I don't think this is going to do very much, but obviously US data later on. It is slightly later, coming out around 3 p.m. So I'm going to see what we're going to do. Yeah, I might hold off. I might hold off entering, but obviously at 1:30. But I will update you on that. So one thing that I want to stress to everyone is, make sure that you've got your very strict routine. I think that's one thing that I've probably had, since I become profitable these last, I don't know, 7 years. But I think it's one thing that I've really kind of from speaking to everybody and, I mean, one-to-ones with everyone really helps me. But it's all these kind of I can identify, where people have issues. And if it doesn't matter what you're trading, what strategy you're trading, you need a very strict routine. All right, uber strict routine, and obviously that is what is important. And I think traders, even hedge funds, have such a strict routine in regards to what they're looking for, what they're doing, which department it's then handed over to. They've got their own routine. And then obviously the actual execution traders, they've obviously got their own routine and checklist too. So there's no point trying to do this half-heartedly because that will turn you from a trader into a gambler, and you might as well go on, I don't know, Ladbrokes or stake and place bets there, but because we wanted to take you from someone who's betting on the markets to an actual trader. And what do I kind of reason behind an actual trader? It is, someone who, even if they lose, they've got a reason why they've entered it, and they would enter that trade all over again. All right, because they appreciate, you can't have 100% win rate in this game. Unfortunately, I wish that you could, but you can't. So. that's one of the most important things. Right, then let's now have a look at obviously what's happened during Asia. All right, so it has been a very steady market. So obviously Asia opened here, right, and obviously it's pushed up nicely. Now the Iran talks have gone a bit quiet, and I think that's why markets having a bit of a release. You know, the dollar is hawkish. All right. There's no other way to, explain it. It's hawkish, it's bullish, it's optimistic, it's aggressive. All right. That is how the Federal Reserve are gearing up. And we cannot ignore that, even though everything's happening, we cannot ignore that. So that's obviously one thing that we've got to keep an eye on. We've got to, make sure that, we're, as, imagine, news creates a wave, we've got to ride it. Yeah. That's obviously one thing that we've got to do. And we've got to make sure that we do it, well, properly. And yeah, make sure we're always on the right side of the wave so we don't crash out. Um, so dollar overall has broken that 101. All right, which is what this is going to act as a should act as quite a big level of support here. I am expecting this to hold. Yields have had a bit of a tail off here. They peaked up early market. Sorry, we are here. Um, yeah, yields, yeah, slow. All right, nothing's really happened. But obviously the main thing is this level here is holding. Remember what I mentioned, and it's that overall kind of time frame here that yields, although they pip down into this area here, they've come straight back up. So there is still optimism, flowing into the dollar. And then stock markets round about break even. So if we're going to be identifying using the dollar, using yields, using stocks, we want to identify risk appetite. I'd say there's a little bit of a mixed risk appetite here because stocks aren't flying, yields aren't flying, dollars not really flying either. All right, so there's a little bit of mixed reactions in the market as opposed to where money is going. All right, it's trickling into the dollar, but I'd say overall there's not as much money flowing as what there would be if it was more decisive one way or the other. Yeah, all right. So that's obviously what we're looking at the moment. In regards to gold and oil, oil's still tailing off, still holding around this area here. You can see here, look how slow price action's been on oil. That to me is, kind of I don't think it's telling us, anything one way or another here. I think it's telling us definitely that we've got obviously, Iranian oil flowing into the market, which is between 20 to 30% of the world's oil supply. But it's also telling us that, there isn't uber confidence that this will continue because otherwise we won't be trading around this area here, So everything is a little bit intermittent there this morning. When it's a bit intermittent, you obviously want to instantly trade, with a bit of kind of care and just make sure that you're not overexposing because there is no point because markets aren't really moving. So that's obviously how you identify, what is happening, where's money flowing before obviously we've even hopped on our charts here. All right, so Aussie, and I'm still staying clear of here. I do like a short trade this week on Aussie. I just don't like it yet. So GBP as well, we'd stayed clear of. It's had a big push and it's held there. So I'm going to stay away from it. Obviously, we've got a bit of news coming out in about half an hour. So That's why we kind of stayed away. If I was looking at the pound right now, I'd want to see one way or another. We've obviously got if we're doing a if we're going short or if we're going long, we want to split it up into these reactions here, all right? We want a nice confidence break here, all right? But at the same time, we do have a strong dollar, all right? So, I would prefer to be going short from up here. Or I would, if I get rid of this, my obviously highest probability, or I'd like this to break, and then we tail off to the downside here. Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of looking for here. All right. Euro, happy. Obviously, it's not triggered. But happy obviously with the overall. I'm not saying that it's not gonna trigger. We just obviously want to be trading from the obviously ideal spots, especially as a Monday. And I don't take things, lightly. I think last week, Monday morning, we did really, really well, and then we gave it all back in the afternoon, So I don't want that to happen again, So I'm trying to be a bit careful here. USD JPY, all right? I really, really like this trade. I like the idea. Ooh, I like the idea, sorry, of us having one of these candles here. Nice spike, wham, out. There we go. I do think these highs are going to be tested because dollar is too strong. But how we've been doing really, really well on USD JPY is having a nice low trigger, and these candles coming. You can see here. Here's one here, perfect. Here's one here, perfect. You want to be looking, here's one here, perfect. One here, perfect. They have been happening a lot. So I think that this is a brilliant way to obviously trade on USD JPY at the, moments. We're erring on the side of caution, but it happens so quickly. So yeah, that's kind of what we are looking at here. And then last but not least, we've got gold. Like I'd said, we have had one trigger here. It was a very, very tight trigger. Oh, so we've had this one here, and it was very, very quick too. So remember, if you're trading aggressively, we've got a top entry, a middle entry, and a bottom entry. You want to split this up into three. So, top entry has triggered and pretty happy. I do see this trickling up. So let's we'll wait and see. What happens here. But yeah, that's about it. Let me go through the questions and see if I've got any. Right, ask me a question. Anything you obviously want. That's the beauty of this is that I'm here and obviously happy to answer. If not, we'll obviously end it here. But if you guys got any questions, reach out. If not, if everyone's happy, cool. Right, we will end it here. All right. Have a great Monday. Don't be a a stranger. You guys have all got my at. So make sure you drop me a message if you got any questions. And yeah, feeling really really good about this week. So let's smash it. Have a good one, team. Have a good one.